Solid-state drives make a big deal out of their marketing language with different initialisms like MLC, TLC, VNAND, 3D VNAND, and other sorts of NAND. And that's what we're talking about today. This is sort of a special edition feature or analysis where we're just strictly going to define what NAND is, the different types, and how they impact you. NAND and the NAND type used in SSDs ties directly into price, performance, endurance, or longevity as it is often known, and understanding what NAND is and how different functions on the controller work to further endurance or performance. That's important to buying an SSD that makes sense for your needs and important to considering the budget restrictions that you might have versus the wants in terms of performance and endurance. Let's start with an animation that we made for this video. This animation highlights a few of the SSD's core components, including electrical components like transistors, memory components like flash, and the driving controller. And this, as we cut to a simplified SSD image, contains a few basic parts. There are 8 flash modules, a controller, and 8 channels to connect the modules to the controller. The controller is effectively the SSD's CPU equivalent and handles all of the transactional processing and wear leveling and garbage collection to ensure that the memory has a long service life. And when I say memory, I do mean flash memory in this instance. For sake of example, let's talk about a specific type of NAND. So one of those might be 16 nanometer flash NAND that is of the MLC variety. So we'll dive into each of those things. MLC means multi-level cell, something we'll dive deep with momentarily, and NAND Flash is the specific type of memory. NAND Flash is a non-volatile permanent memory, sort of an opposite of system RAM, which is temporary and volatile. And unlike a hard drive, everything is sort of transacted at the electron level and without mechanical parts whatsoever. The NAND prefix, NAND, indicates the type of logic gate used for the flash. These gates control the flow of electricity to components, as a dam would do for water. And if we cut to another simple SSD image here, you can see, digging a bit deeper, that each flash module could contain multiple flash dies. In this case, our imaginary SSD saturates all 8 of the controller's channels. There are 8 maximally with this controller, ensuring maximum throughput, and it hosts 4 128 gigabit dies per module. With 8 modules, that's 32 dies at 128 gigabits or 16 gigabytes each, for a total of 512 gigabytes of storage. After subtracting over provisioning, which we've talked about in previous videos, that comes out to what you'd see as a 480 gigabyte SSD. So that's the math. That's how you get these 512 gigabyte drives or 480 gigabyte drives. It's by having die assortments like you've seen in our sample here. But what's going on under the NAND? There's SLC, MLC, TLC. They're all associated with different performance and endurance metrics, and they're targeted at different parts of the market, with MLC sort of filling a gap as the affordable but longer lasting version of NAND, with TLC being the 30% cheaper but more capacity but potentially shorter lifespan NAND. And these very hard and fast rules apply in some ways but aren't 100% correct, because there's a lot more going on underneath, and the controller does dictate just how long a life you can get out of the NAND. NAND is spliced into an organization structure to ensure your drive ages well. A flash die consists of a few planes, normally 2, which are then broken into blocks. Let's say there's 1024 of those. Blocks contain pages. A page is the smallest unit of data storage on the SSD, generally 16 kilobytes in size, before going down to the cell level, which is very small. The SSD is split in this way because the controller moves data constantly to ensure all the blocks get worn in equally. There's a certain lifespan. NAND Flash can only tolerate so many programs or writes and so many erases, collectively called PE cycles, before the NAND expires and enters a locked read-only state. If any block exhausts its PE cycles unevenly, it could jeopardize the entire drive, and this is where we could get tangential and talk about controller technology and garbage collection, wear leveling, and mitigating endurance concerns, but we'll do that in a future video. Every time you write data to your SSD, you're actively killing it. But the process of wear leveling and relatively high average PE cycle count does mean that most users will exhaust the system's usable life before that of the SSD alone. But there's more. Let's look at the cells. Cells work at the bit level. There are billions of cells in every SSD, each responsible for its own bit or bits of data. And SLC stands for single level cell, MLC stands for multi-level cell, or 2 levels, and TLC stands for triple level cell. So here's the NAND type for SLC. SLC NAND can contain only 1 bit of data per cell, so it's smaller in capacity but faster. There are only 2 possible voltage states for this cell, 1 or 0, and when a charge is sent to the cell, it returns either a 1 or a 0 for the voltage check. A voltage check sees what data, if any, currently occupies that cell, and because there are only 2 possible voltage outcomes, the device runs with greater stability and performance than the more populated multi-level and triple-level cells, each of which store exponentially more voltage levels and require greater electrical precision at the time of checking. This also means that an SLC SSD, which is rare to find on the market now, would cost more than MLC because MLC can store twice the bits per cell, 2 bits per cell, and it does 4 voltage checks per cell. Now this means that SLC, which is rare to find these days, is more expensive than something like MLC. MLC per gigabyte is cheaper, and that's partly because it can fit 2 bits of data per cell, and corresponding with that, it's got 4 voltage levels per cell, where SLC only had 2, 1 and 0. TLC then contains 3 bits of data per cell, so it can hold 33% more data per cell as MLC, but uses 8 voltage levels. Cost per gigabyte goes drastically down with TLC and MLC, but there is a speed and endurance trade-off. TLC has 7 read points between its voltage levels, MLC has 3, and SLC has 1. More read points means more space for data, but greater granularity required at the electrical level for voltage checks. The electrical charge of the device weakens as it ages, so that extra granularity for TLC voltage checking does mean it will generally become worn out faster than its MLC and SLC counterparts. It can store more data per cell, and it's cheaper, but that means the cell is being programmed and erased more frequently, which also wears it down. It's a bit slower as a result of the same voltage checking process, but that's a necessity in having an SSD. That's the trade-off though for cost and capacity, but there's a lot more to it. In future videos, and actually in past videos, we have previously and will in the future talk about over-provisioning and how it's used to lengthen the lifespan of NAND of different types. Talk about write amplification factor, what that is. You can actually find that in our SSD dictionary on gamersnexus.net if you click specs dictionary at the top. And we'll even talk about some of the other controller technologies like garbage collection, wear leveling, and things of that nature, which are all now changing with the advent and push of Phison and Marvell controllers into the market as SandForce somewhat becomes obsolete, at least its 2nd gen, until the fabled 3rd generation maybe one day ships. So that's all for this video. Check out the video in the post roll to learn about how SSDs are made in a previous tour of Kingston's factory that we did actually a couple years ago now, but it's still relevant. And as always, Patreon link in the post roll video. Subscribe for more information. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.